Hello everyone, it's Shannon here. In today's video I'm going to show you how to create this rainbow panel shaker card using some new products from Waffle Flower's April release. First up is the brand new Rainbows stamp set. If you buy the combo, it comes with the rainbow panel die, and then you have a standalone word die which is called Rainbow Word Die, and this is an older product I'm going to use to help me create my sentiment. It's called a sentiments die. So first thing, I'm just going to take the rainbow panel die and die cut out of some 110-pound white cardstock, the frame, and that rainbow. I'm not using that inside section, so I'm just popping that rainbow inside the frame and then running it through my die cutting machine. I'm going to pull out the frame and the rainbow. I'm going to be careful not to pop out those inner pieces. I want to keep those intact because I want to keep that rainbow all one piece right now. I'm going to go ahead and die cut one more rainbow out of some more 110-pound white cardstock and then put that aside. So I've got two rainbows and the frame, and I'm going to set those aside. Now I'm going to move on to die cutting some white craft foam. I'm going to die cut that frame and rainbow out of the white craft foam as well. So I've gone ahead and die cut that with my Cuttlebug. I just found that my Cuttlebug seems to cut craft foam really well. So I use that, and I'm going to pull off, just like I did before with the cardstock, I'm going to pull out the rainbow, not pop out any of those inner pieces of the rainbow, and pop out that inner piece inside the frame though. So I've got my two pieces here. I'm going to pull out that inside piece. I don't need that, I just want the frame. So I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm going to start actually constructing the well for my shaker. I've got a A2 size panel of acetate over there, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to, before I glue that acetate to this craft foam, I'm going to trim a little section out of the frame for the rainbow to go nest inside there. So it's one continuous kind of piece. That's just so you don't see the little part where the frame or the rainbow holds all those thin lines together and keeps the spacing correct. So I have a grid piece of acetate here that is supposed to help me keep this frame nice and square, but I found that it was actually a little bit it was too slick on the surface. My work mat was better, so I do eventually remove it, but right now I'm zoomed in here so you can kind of see how I'm applying the glue. I'm only applying it onto those thin ribs of the rainbow, and I'm using a very not very much, just a small amount, and just placing a little bit there. I'm being very careful here of my glue use. I don't want lots of glue because I don't want the glue to spill out or squish out and get all over the acetate. And I kind of made a mistake here, and I should have gone straight to gluing the acetate, but I went and trimmed off that top part of the cardstock rainbow, and because I went and stuck it down here, I made a mistake. I need to stick down the acetate first, so that's why I'm reapplying the glue here. And now I'm going to take that grid out of the way because, again, I found that my panel was kind of sliding around too much and I couldn't get everything nice and square after all, because that surface was too slick. And I'm going to use the actual acetate to help me get my and line the frame up with the corners of the acetate, and that will make sure that this is all nice and all the corners are 90 degrees and everything's nice and square. And once I stick that acetate down, I'm being careful, and again, I was really careful about how much glue I put on the rainbow, especially the thin ribs of the rainbow, because all that inner section of the rainbow, I'm going to pop that out, so I don't want any glue on those inner sections, and you'll see it later once the glue dries. I'll pop it out. So now that I've got the acetate down, I'm ready to apply more glue, and I'm doing it the same way I did before. The only difference now is I'm applying it onto the acetate, so there's that layer of acetate over the craft foam, and after I apply the glue all over, I will take my cardstock rainbow and my cardstock frame and place that directly on top of the glue that is now on the acetate. And again, I was really careful here and put glue just where those ribs were underneath the acetate. So I didn't put it all over. I just want a little bit of glue too, just to keep that cardstock to stick. Now, you do not have to do this top layer of cardstock. I just like the way that looks. I think it just looks clean and truly looks like a card, a handmade card. I didn't like the way the white craft foam looked, but you could just have left the acetate on top of the craft foam and not did a layer of white cardstock, because I don't even stamp on this cardstock or anything, so you could have just left that layer out. So I have the second rainbow here, and now I'm just doing some simple ink blending on those intersections in between the ribs. I am using some distress inks. Mostly I do use one Waffle Flower ink, Chirp Chirp, because it's a very nice green, and this will actually match what I am placing inside these ribs. The shaker elements the colors match the shaker elements that I'm putting inside of these ribs. So the colors I'm using here, the distress inks, the blue was Mermaid Lagoon, the green was Chirp Chirp, it was a Waffle Flower ink. The yellow is Mustard Seed, the orange here is Carved Pumpkin, and the last color I used as a pink is Worn Lipstick. And again, I just chose these colors because they match the shaker elements that I'm putting inside them, or inside the rainbow in those sections. So just doing some really simple, basic ink blending, not even trying to do a gradation, just basically getting some color onto the paper. Really simple. Now that I've got the rainbow done, I'm going to work on my background panel. I'm going to do just a light gradation starting at the bottom of the panel. This is an A2 panel made from 110-pound white cardstock, and so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just taking a Waffle Flower ink. This is called Daydreaming, and just doing some light ink blending where I'm making it darker at the base or darker at the bottom, and it gets lighter towards the top. So just a real simple gradation. However, it's important to note that I'm not taking that blue, that Daydreaming color, all the way up to the top. I am stopping just a little bit past halfway, so I want it to fade out to complete white. So now I'm going to put these ink blended sections of the rainbow back into the rainbow here. I've got the rainbow flipped over, and the reason why this has some grids on the back is this is just some scrap paper that I'm using today. And I will grab some tape once I've got all the pieces back in, and then just use some tape to hold those rainbow sections in place. I pulled off a little too big of a piece of tape here, so I'm just using my scissors to trim off the overhang. And I'll do a couple more pieces of tape at the bottom, and then that will be done. I will later glue this rainbow here that I assembled and ink blended. I will glue it onto this background panel, but I have to get the placement right, so I will do that later once the piece that we made in the beginning is dry. So this, I went ahead and die cut out of some black cardstock a sentiment strip using the sentiments die, and the rainbow word using the rainbow word die. And now I'm going to stamp the rest of my sentiment. I'm going to pull off a stamp here from the new Rainbows stamp set, and I'm going to use this leftover black cardstock that I die cut the sentiment strip out of as basically like a jig. So I'm centering now that stamp inside the negative space where I die cut that sentiment strip. Once I get it centered and nice and straight, I pick it up with my MISTI, pop that sentiment strip back into the negative, into the opening, and now I will ink it up with Versamark ink, and it will stamp the sentiment perfectly straight on this perfectly cut strip. I love using the sentiment strip or the sentiment die to make sentiments that are on a strip. It just cuts it perfectly. I don't know, I have a hard time cutting perfectly straight sentiment strips, so this has really been a lifesaver. So I just embossed it in some white embossing powder and heat set it. Now I'm going to do a little trimming to that Rainbows word die cut. I'm going to cut off that S because I want the sentiment to say sending you a rainbow, so I need to remove that S, and then I'm just going to use my scissors to trim that off. Real simple. I love how I love it when word dies are so versatile like that. You can just cut off the S and now you have a new sentiment. really great. So now I'm going to start to construct this, and now you can kind of see what I meant before. I have to get that blended rainbow perfectly positioned behind the top panel where that rainbow sits. And to do that, I really need to pop out those intersections in that top panel. I'm trying to see if I can do it here without it, but I just am a little worried because I can't actually see the ribs or the colored sections. I just worry about getting everything lined up straight. So I'm just going to pop out the that inner part. And I kept that in there before. The reason why I kept all those negative spaces in there, I knew I was going to pop them out, but I kept them in there because it keeps those ribs of the rainbow nice and straight. Without those ribs, or without those inner pieces still in there, the ribs can kind of get wobbly and wiggly because they're just a thin piece of cardstock or a thin piece of craft foam. So keeping the negative pieces in there really does help to keep everything nice and straight, and it helps you to make sure your alignment is perfect. So now I'm going to use this top panel here to help me line up my background panel. And you can see I'm kind of going back and forth, back and forth. I put a little bit of washi tape down on the background panel to just hold it in place so it wasn't slipping and sliding underneath me. And I actually have, I apologize, it's off camera, but I actually have a little, or off screen, a little bit of tape holding that rainbow down, kind of like a hinge. So it's taped down at the very top of the panel with the tape going off onto my craft mat, and I am just kind of moving and adjusting it till I get it just right. When the corners of the background panel matches the corners of the top panel and the rainbow, both rainbows line up perfectly. Once I get it perfect, that's when I grab my liquid glue, and I'm placing glue right now on the back side of that rainbow. And again, I'm sorry, it was off camera. And then I just glued it right down, and now that it's perfect, I can even, because I use liquid glue, I can even like adjust it just a little bit, which is always really great about liquid glue, which is why I use it pretty much, that's like the only adhesive I use. And now I've got it perfectly lined up. So now I'm ready to do the fun part, which is fill in my well, because this is basically going to be the top or the lid to my shaker card. I'm now ready to flip over that front panel, and I have all these wells here created by the craft foam, and I'm going to fill those up with my shaker elements. Now, I went to the craft store and I was planning on buying seed beads to fill up those rainbow sections, but they were kind of expensive, and I just didn't really like the colors that they had to choose from. So I was walking around not really sure what I was going to do, and then I stumbled upon these sprinkles. And I thought, oh, that'll be perfect. And the best part is that these sprinkles were only $1 for a color. So I was able to get all 5 colors with, of course, my 40% off coupon for less than $5. So it's pretty great, I thought. And there was tons. I used very little for this card. I actually made 2 of these cards, and I still you wouldn't even known that I used any from the packet at all. So pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty good solution for this shaker card. I do end up using sequins though for the kind of the sky area of the panel, everywhere else besides the rainbow, I should say. But wherever I just kind of squeeze out a little bit of the sprinkles into the well, and then wherever I got like a stray sprinkle, I'll use my tweezers to kind of pick it up. And I do use my tweezers also to kind of make sure all my sprinkles are basically one level. I don't have a big pile. You don't want a big pile that will kind of stop your wells from meeting the back panel and really sealing them shut. So now I've just got, again, like I've mentioned before, I just have some clear sequins here that I'm just putting in. I have 2 sizes. I put the larger size in first, and again, I'm doing the same thing as I just mentioned with the sprinkles. I'm just making sure that's one, they're pretty evenly dispersed at the bottom there, and they're not all piled up. There's not a big like mountain of sequins. So now that it's all even, I've grabbed my liquid glue, and I'm putting some more glue on the craft foam here. So I'm putting, and then same thing, I'm being very careful. Now the sprinkles are very sticky because of the sugar. So they really do stick to just the slightest amount of touch the glue, and when they stick, you can see I'm just taking wiping the nozzle of the glue off with my hand and just throwing those sprinkles away. And again, no big deal because I have got tons of sprinkles. It's okay if I lose a little, and you only have like a couple stick when you run it along. When you run like a bead of glue along that really fine rib of the craft foam, just a little bit sticks. So I got glue all over the frame and the rainbow, and then I added the background panel and I just sealed it shut. So now all the sequins and sprinkles are all sealed up inside. And now I'm going to take my sentiment, just trimmed a little bit off of the sentiment strip, just a little of the kind of the border was a little too big. And now I'm arranging. You could see I took that sentiment strip and went through the hoop on the bee, and just kind of arranging it here and perfecting it. And once I get it the way I want it to look, I grabbed a little bit of purple tape and held it down. I also die cut one more cloud, one of the smaller clouds, using one of the cloud dies from that rainbow panel die set. And now I'm going to glue the sentiment right down onto the clouds. I just felt like I needed one more cloud to kind of balance it out because that sentiment is a little bit larger. And then I just use my liquid glue to glue everything down in place. And that's it. I will hold up the card. I'm doing a little cleanup here with my brush because there is just a little bit of black paper cuts from left over on that rainbow when I die cut it. So I'm just kind of brushing those off. And I'll hold it up here to the camera so you can see it a little bit better. And you can see those cute sprinkles inside. And I was able to really fill it up, which I think is fun. And then we have the beautiful sparkle from the sequins as well. So I think that worked out really well. The only thing I forgot to do here, I got a little excited, is I still have, this is just a panel. I haven't actually glued it onto the card base here. So I have my A2 top folding card base here, and I'm just going to take some more of that liquid glue, just glue it on put it on the back of that panel, and then just stick that panel down. We did all the hard work earlier, so it's really easy to stick that panel down on there. And now my card is done. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and enjoyed this project using some new products from Waffle Flower's April release. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.